What would you do if one day you discovered that the person who once called you mom was now rewriting the family story and leaving your name out of it? Veronica Hale once believed that silence was a form of grace, that if she kept giving, kept sacrificing, kept standing quietly in the background, then one day her daughter would understand, would look back and be grateful. But sometimes silence isn't remembered, it's taken advantage of. For 5 years after her husband's death, Veronica spent nearly all of her savings to help her daughter rebuild her life. A new house, furniture, a dishwasher, hardwood floors, even a mortgage loan worth over $200,000. Every month, she sent $2,800 without fail, while surviving on instant noodles at the end of the month. No one checked in, no one remembered. Until one Christmas night, when she found herself left off her own family's guest list. When they labeled her as unworthy to be present, from that moment on, Veronica was no longer the self-sacrificing mother. She became a woman who knew when to stop, who knew how to reopen the chapters where others had erased her name, and who knew how to reclaim her own story, with intellect, dignity, and the calm of someone who doesn't need to shout to be seen. This is not a revenge story. It's a story about reclaiming one's worth in a world that sometimes forgets who held everything together with their whole heart. Where are you watching this from? Texas, California, Florida, or some small corner of America? Leave a comment with the state you live in and share your thoughts about mothers like Veronica. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next moving story from Him Revenge Tales. Emma's kitchen was filled with the warm scent of freshly baked cinnamon waffles. The crystal chandelier overhead cast soft reflections onto the wine-colored silk tablecloth, shimmering through the baccarat glass I had bought her last year for her birthday. Tiny LED lights blinked around the nearly 10-foot Christmas tree, decorated with ornaments from Anthropologie, not the discount store we used to shop at when she still lived with me. I settled into the soft leather chair, running my hand over its handcrafted stitching, feeling the cost of every needle and thread. I had helped pay for this sofa, along with the heating system, the Italian cabinets, even the imported brass door handles. Every cent came from the savings Henry and I spent nearly 30 years building. I was thinking maybe this year I could cook Christmas myself, Emma said gently, but not evasively. Ryan and I want to try a Nordic menu, and his parents will be joining us. I raised an eyebrow. So I'm not making the turkey anymore? She went quiet, then added, actually, this year, you might not need to come. I thought I'd misheard. What do you mean? I mean, you don't need to come to Christmas dinner. The house is a bit tight, and they're very particular about holiday traditions. I just don't want you to feel out of place. I turned my head to look around to make sure I was still in this house. Still, the oak floor I had been paying off since the 15th month. Still, the range hood I replaced after Ryan's caught fire from forgotten oil. Still, the set of Wusthof knives in the cabinet bought with Henry's life insurance money. I looked at my only daughter. She avoided my eyes, fidgeting with her wedding ring. The gold caught the light, matching the Tiffany necklace her mother-in-law had given her last year. Because I don't fit in? I asked slowly. That's not it. You know how they are. Ryan's family is a little old-fashioned. They have their ways. I sat upright, hands resting on my lap. And in those ways, there's no room for the mother-in-law who raised you for over 30 years. Don't make this dramatic, Mom. Emma shook her head. It's just simpler if you're not there. Just this year. Next year will be different. Just 1 year? Being excluded from Christmas, like someone missing a dinner reservation. I glanced at the Christmas tree again. The little gold angel I'd bought her when she was 8 was no longer there. The tree was full of shiny new things, polished, cold. I stood up. Could you help me get my coat? Emma froze. You don't have to leave right away. Yes, I do, I said, walking toward the door. On the wall was a family photo. In Emma's wedding picture, I had been photoshopped into the edge, blurred more than anyone else. I remembered having to pay a tailor to alter my dress that day because I'd gained weight from stress, from everything. But I had still smiled my brightest. Now I only felt tired. Emma quietly handed me my black wool coat. "I'm sorry, Mom." I put it on without answering. My hand touched the door handle, cold, solid, and expensive. I had picked it out after Ryan complained the old one looked cheap. I opened the door. The cold wind slapped my face like a backhand. I turned my head and said softly, "Wish your in-laws a very Merry Christmas." Emma's lips parted. "Mom," but I had already stepped out. I didn't start the car right away. I sat in the cabin looking out at the row of brightly lit houses. Their tree, tall, beautiful, perfect, and cold. I thought of the one Emma and I once made with wire hangers bent into circles, wrapped in aluminum foil to make it shine. The year Henry died, just the two of us, wrapped in a blanket, laughing over burnt cookies. I pulled out my phone and dialed a familiar number. After 3 rings, a voice answered. "First District Bank, how may I help you?" I took a breath. "I'd like to cancel an automatic transfer." "Which account, ma'am?" "The one paying the mortgage for the house at 27 Highgate Street. I'm the guarantor, Veronica Hale." The woman's voice remained polite. "I'll transfer you to the handling department." When the call ended, I set the phone down and leaned my head gently against the steering wheel. For a moment, something opened inside me, hollow, but no longer bleeding. I drove home slowly, past every street, every corner, every familiar intersection. There was the stone bench where I once ate ice cream with Emma when she was in 2nd grade. The auto shop where I had to beg to pay in installments to fix Ryan's tires. The coffee shop where I stood in the rain because Emma once said, "Arriving 5 minutes early is rude, Mom." Red light. I stopped. Through the windshield, a family laughed and hugged, arms full of Christmas gifts, children bouncing around. Another year, another Christmas alone. But this time, it was my choice. When I got home, I took off my shoes, hung my coat, and stepped into the small but tidy kitchen. The chicken soup I'd simmered yesterday still held a bit of warmth. I didn't turn on the TV, no Christmas music, just the sound of wind pressing against the old window. I stood at the window, looking into the yard. The neighbors' lights cast faint, trembling shadows on my wall. I used to think silence came from love, from patience, from keeping the peace. But in the end, silence only makes people forget you exist. I sat down, picked up a piece of reheated chicken. No tears, no anger. Just one thought echoed in my head. Quiet, but sharp as a blade. I once thought I was a mother, but that day, I realized I was just a decoration, used when convenient and put away when I no longer fit. 5 years ago, the bank office was quiet, filled only with the hum of the printer and the soft whir of the ceiling air conditioner. The young bank officer smiled. "Are you sure, ma'am? This is a large loan. You'll be the co-signer and held responsible if the other party misses any payments." I didn't hesitate. "I'm sure." Emma sat beside me, her eyes glistening. "I promise I'll pay it off quickly, Mom. This is our dream." At that time, my husband Henry had been gone for over a year. The house was quiet, the children grown, every meal used only one set of dishes. I told myself that if I could no longer hold a full family together, at least I could help my child build a new home. The keys to the new house were handed over on an early winter day. A 2-story home in West Haven, painted pale cream, with a wide balcony and a wooden porch, just like the ones Emma used to cut out from interior design magazines I still kept in a drawer. On move-in day, I brought over a pot of beef stew and a basket of spices. Ryan was busy checking the Wi-Fi and arranging the leather sofa. "Don't worry, Mom," Emma said, holding my hand in the kitchen. "This is only temporary. Once we're doing better, you won't have to worry about anything. You'll always be appreciated." I smiled. That word "always" sounded like a wedding vow. Who wouldn't want to believe it? In the first month, I helped cover the down payment, $47,000. I withdrew from my retirement fund, then quietly sold my wedding ring from Henry to pay for the dishwasher. In the second month, the wooden veneer on the floor started peeling. I opened a new credit card to cover the repair. In the fourth month, Emma wanted to replace the heater because it's too old, our friends will judge. I said nothing. I just quietly signed again. And so it went. Month 6, month 8, month 12. I became used to electric bills in my name, used to receiving bank emails at 2 a.m. notifying a $2,800 auto deduction. Whenever I texted, "Is everything okay?" Emma would just reply, "We're super busy, but thank you so much, Mom." I never asked for repayment, never once asked, when. My meals gradually simplified, from roast beef sandwiches to instant noodles, from grilled meat to boiled eggs. I started tracking every cent in a notebook. Even an 80-cent pen required consideration. But I never stopped transferring money. Once when the bank called to alert me that my account was about to be overdrawn, I simply said, "Let it go through. My pension comes in next week." In the second year, I withdrew my entire emergency savings. In the third year, I canceled the Italy trip I had promised myself after retirement. In the fourth, I sold my car and started walking to the grocery store. And in the fifth year, I stopped buying Christmas gifts for myself. One time, I called Emma to invite her over for dinner. "I made creamy mushroom soup, your favorite." She chuckled over the phone. "Mom, Ryan's not a fan of that smell. Maybe I'll invite you over another time." Another time, I left a box of baked goods at her door with a note, "Mom misses you." 2 days later, the box was still there, cold and shriveled. No one had opened the door. I started to wonder, was I demanding affection or just becoming surplus in a world that no longer needed me? Christmas Eve, year 5. I strung a simple set of lights along the balcony of my rental unit. In the kitchen, I simmered chicken broth, added some celery stalks and peppercorns. I brought out Henry's old dishes, just 2, still faintly scratched from decades of hand washing. I placed a small candle on the table, played a Christmas album by Sinatra. The phone didn't ring. No cards. No messages. No greetings from my daughter. I turned on the porch light and stepped outside. From the second floor of the apartment complex, I looked over to the West Haven villas. Emma's house was lit up. Through the glass windows, I could see shadows of people laughing, dresses, wine, and a large table with candles, roast turkey, white linen, and silver cutlery. I didn't feel sad, just invisible. I returned to my room, poured myself a cup of warm tea, sat by the window, and opened an old journal. A line I wrote in 2018, "As long as she's happy, I can endure anything." At the time, I believed it. Now, I just stayed silent. In January, the bank sent a warning. My account had dropped below the minimum balance. I called Emma. "Would it be okay if I reduced the transfers now that you and Ryan are doing better?" Her voice was cold. "Mom, Ryan's investing in a new startup this month. Could you help a little longer?" I nodded. "Okay, just one word, a habit." I once thought love had no conditions. I once thought I would never count pennies with my child. I once thought every sacrifice had meaning. But then one day, I began to think differently. I began recording every transfer, every dollar. I started collecting every bill, every bank statement, screenshots of every item Emma posted on Facebook, from the sofa set to the chandelier. And I began listing every time I'd been turned away, not with words, but with silence. I didn't know exactly what I was preparing for, only that somewhere deep down I had stopped believing I was still a mother. I had become a walking wallet, a shadow that sends money, a number that stays silent. I was making tea when the phone rang. On the screen appeared the name I didn't want to see, Isabella. That name lit up like a symbol I'd drawn a question mark around for years and never dared to answer directly. I stood still for a moment, the spoon still in my hand, stirring the hot water. The room was strangely quiet. Finally, I picked up. "Hello?" Isabella's voice came through, not rushed, not warm, just perfectly controlled. "Hello, Veronica. I need a favor." I set the cup down. I'm listening. My parents are flying into Portland this afternoon. Alaska Air Flight 4117 arriving at 2 p.m. Could you pick them up? I blinked. Pick them up? Yes. You're more familiar with the airport, and you're free during the day. I'm busy preparing for the dinner tonight, and Emma has a meeting with the sponsor group. Can you help? I didn't respond. I just took a breath. Last night, I'd been excluded from the very dinner I helped fund, to the tune of over $200,000. Last night, I had looked at my daughter's lit-up house without even the right to knock, and this morning, they needed a driver. After you told me I wasn't appropriate for the party? I asked, my voice as steady as the granite countertop I once paid to install in their kitchen. There was a pause on the other end. Then Isabella chuckled softly. I think you misunderstood. Last night was simply a matter of practical arrangements. Today is just reality. The elderly need help. You used to be someone who took care of things. I hope you still are. I clenched my fingers. The cold didn't come from the weather. It came from memory. Once at the first gathering at Emma's house after she married Ryan, Isabella said in front of everyone, Veronica is great in the kitchen. That smell of cooking just seems to follow her. Everyone laughed. I laughed along, not realizing it was the first stab. Another time, I brought flan to the Christmas party. Isabella gently placed it on the side table, where the paper plates and napkins were. Her fruitcake, on the other hand, sat proudly on the silver tray, center stage. Then there was that dinner with her friends, when I chimed in about something Henry once read. She cut me off. Oh, I forgot. You didn't study anything related to philosophy, right? I just smiled. I avoided confrontation. Because I thought, as Emma's mother, I should be patient. I should step aside for the man she chose. But each silent moment, each false compliment, had cut me with 100 invisible blades over the last 5 years. Back on the call, I spoke slowly. They need someone quiet, someone who serves, just like you said before. Isabella paused, then replied, I think you understand the situation. My parents are old. You've been old too. You know what it's like to be left at an airport. I let out a quiet laugh, sharp, clean. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. Thank you, Isabella said, her tone perfectly shaped. And Veronica, wear that navy blue blouse, please. The one you wore at Ryan's graduation. My parents said you looked less provincial in that one. I didn't answer. I simply hung up. No goodbye, no please, no oh thank you. Just an order. I stared at the phone in my hand. 1 minute, 2. Then I placed it on the table. I didn't go to the airport. I made a new pot of tea, this time with a bit of cinnamon. I took my chair out to the balcony, opened the Portland Times, and read the crossword. One clue caught my eye. 12 letters means controlled waiting. I smiled. Delayed gratification. I wrote it in, postponement. Perfect. At exactly 2:45 p.m., my phone buzzed. The first message, Veronica, where are you? Then more. My parents are at Carousel 3. They don't see you. Pick up your phone. What's going on? They called a taxi. But what you did was irresponsible. You owe us an apology. This won't end quietly. I turned off the sound, then placed the phone face down. I pulled out the cast iron skillet and made tomato and egg stir-fry, Henry's favorite dish. I ate each bite slowly, tasting the sweetness of my own decision. Around 6 p.m., my doorbell rang. 3 loud knocks, firm, without hesitation. I walked to the door and opened it slightly, saying nothing. Standing before me was Douglas Whitmore, red-faced, tie crooked. Next to him, his wife Marianne, lips pressed tight. And behind them, Isabella, coat wrinkled, lipstick smudged, heels scraping my doormat. Who do you think you are? Douglas shouted. You left us waiting more than 3 hours at that godforsaken airport. I thought you didn't agree with the climate here, I replied, tilting my head. Isabella stepped forward. Mother, you embarrassed the family. I don't even know how to explain this to our guests. I looked at each of them. I thought I was no longer invited to be part of this family. Don't turn this around, Marianne said, waving her hand. What you did was inhumane. Treating the elderly like that is barbaric." I stood upright, calm. "I've served. I've picked up, cooked, and stayed silent. But today, I choose not to." Douglas pointed a finger at me. "You'll pay for this." I nodded. "Perhaps, but not today." I gently pushed the door forward. "You should go. It's going to rain soon." Isabella frowned. "You won't get away with this." I smiled faintly. "I'm not trying to get away, I'm just getting started." Then I closed the door. Not slammed, not rushed. Just a firm, final close. Behind me, the little house was strangely quiet, and for the first time in 5 years, I felt myself standing in a space no longer occupied by someone else's shadow. I didn't go to the airport, but I had finally arrived where I needed to be. After they left that cold afternoon, my house felt lighter, not because there was more space, but because the air no longer thickened with poisonous words. I stood in the kitchen for a long while. The light was still on. The single dining chair I used daily still sat at an angle, just as I'd left it when I got up to make tea that morning. But I didn't sit. I just looked at it, as if seeing myself over the past 5 years, slanted, weary, and staying in place only out of politeness, too courteous to roll away. I opened the cabinet and took out the old folder labeled Emma, New House. It had been sitting there for 5 years, coated in a thin layer of dust, something I had avoided like a Pandora's box. But for the first time, I wanted to open it, not because I had to, but because I was ready to face it. I laid everything on the dining table: bills, bank statements, confirmation letters, even handwritten notes I had scribbled with each transfer. There were also receipts I had kept for the spring mattress, the curtains, the dishwasher in the kitchen I was no longer welcome in. I turned on the calculator. $47,000, the down payment, withdrawn from the savings Henry had left behind. $168,000, 60 months of mortgage payments, $20,800 each, never a day late. $12,300, living room furniture, Italian leather sofa, stone table, faux fur rug. $3,500, central heating system, after the old one broke in the winter of 2020. $1,800, kitchen appliances, including toaster, coffee machine, and stand mixer. I paused. What else? $2,400, outdoor patio set, waterproof, imported from Canada. The one Ryan once said, "You get it, right? Cheap stuff molds. It's embarrassing." I added it all up. The screen showed $234,070. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just sat there, my hand lightly touching that number, as if touching the very spine of my finances, the one I had dismantled vertebra by vertebra, believing I was building a home for my child. But it wasn't a home anymore. Only the roof remained, and I had long been shut out from beneath it. I picked up my phone. My hand was steady, my voice is calm. I called First Horizon Bank, the place where I had scheduled automatic monthly payments for 5 years. A precise schedule, consistent, never off track. Even in months when my account had only a few $100s, the system still ran like a train that never derailed. A female voice came on. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Veronica Hale. This is Tricia. How may I help you today?" I took a deep breath. "I'd like to cancel all recurring payments related to the mortgage loan for the house at 27 Highgate, Portland." There was a brief pause on the other end. Then Tricia asked, "May I confirm you are listed as the financial guarantor on the loan?" "Yes." "Understood. Please hold while I access your records." Typing sounds followed, soft clicks of the keyboard. Then she returned. "I see it now. Monthly transfer of $2,800 to the account of Ryan and Emma Whitmore. Began in March 2019. A total of 60 transactions. Today is the 24th, correct? The next payment is scheduled for the 28th. Would you like to cancel starting this month?" "Effective immediately," I said. "All right, I'll just need to verify a few more details." I answered every question. Social security number, date of birth, address, ex-husband's name, everything was correct. Once the system confirmed it, Tricia lowered her voice slightly. "Ma'am, I apologize if I'm overstepping, but are you sure? This is a significant amount and has been going on for years." I gave a faint smile. "That's exactly why I'm sure." Another pause. "Understood. I've canceled all transfers linked to that mortgage account, effective today. If they call about it, should I direct them to you?" "No need. They'll figure it out." "All right. Thank you for banking with us, and I wish you a peaceful holiday season." "You too." I hung up, looked down at my hand, and realized for the first time it wasn't shaking like all those days I sent payments. I stood up and walked to the fridge. In the corner sat a bottle of red wine I had kept for a special occasion. It had been 4 years. I had never opened it. I took it out, uncorked it. The bottle made a soft pop, like something finally released after being held back for too long. I poured a glass. The deep red caught the kitchen light, rich and dark, like the feeling slowly blooming inside me. There was no toast. No celebration. Just a 62-year-old woman standing in her kitchen, taking a sip of wine and tasting the bittersweet flavor of freedom. I used to be proud of what I gave. I used to believe kindness was a language others would understand. But now it's different. Now I don't need to be understood. I only need to stop. No more giving, no more withdrawing, no more waiting for calls, no more holding on. Just stop. And I had done it. I set the wine glass down, turned on soft music, and sat to write in my notebook, the one where I used to log every expense. December 24th, stop payments, no longer funding someone else's dream, starting to learn how to nourish my own. 2:04 p.m. The first message lit up my phone screen. Sender, Isabella Whitmore. "Veronica, where are you?" I didn't reply. 2 minutes later, my parents have been waiting at Carousel 3 for almost 3 hours. Is something wrong? I was sitting on a wooden chair on the balcony, holding a cup of ginger tea, the steam still curling lightly into the cold afternoon air. The scent of cinnamon lingered gently on my tongue. I didn't read further. I placed the phone face down on the wooden table and looked back at the paper lantern hanging by the window, a birthday gift Emma gave me back in high school. Now its light wasn't warm enough to melt the chill left by her mother-in-law's voice. 3:15 p.m. The phone buzzed 4 times in a row. I still didn't look. I rinsed my teacup, dried my hands, and opened the bottom right drawer of my desk, where I kept all the handwritten letters from Henry. I reread one, written during our first Christmas without him. If you ever find yourself pushed to the sidelines, remember, maybe that crowd never deserved you in the first place. I folded the letter. Now I believed him more than ever. 4:05 p.m. The phone rang again. This time it was a call. I silenced it, then powered it off. That afternoon I baked walnut cookies, a new recipe. The first time I used real butter instead of the cheap, low-fat kind. Also, the first time in years I baked something not meant to be brought to someone else's home. 6:20 p.m. The first knock came, not a knock, but a pounding, harsh, rhythmic, violent. I walked slowly to the door, no rush. Outside, the sky was dim. The porch light cast a faint glow over 3 dark, tall figures standing close together. I knew exactly who they were. I opened the door. Douglas Whitmore, Ryan's father, barged in without waiting for an invitation. His suit was wrinkled, his face flushed red, his eyes bulging. "Are you out of your mind?" he shouted. "We waited at the airport for nearly 3 hours. Couldn't call you, no reply to texts." Behind him came Marianne, his wife, clutching a designer purse, lipstick smudged, hair askew. Her heels slammed into my wooden floor like hammers. Lastly, Isabella entered, face bare, coat wrinkled, hands trembling from rage. Do you realize what you just did?" Isabella hissed. "My mother-in-law nearly fainted at the airport. They had to call a taxi, and the driver wouldn't help with their luggage. They were humiliated in front of everyone." Douglas turned to me, pointing a finger straight at my face. You weren't just irresponsible, you disgraced our family. I stood tall, unmoving. Family, huh? All three froze. I looked each of them in the eye. You've told me I wasn't suitable, not worthy to sit at the table of your noble family. I was the kitchen woman, the uneducated one, the poor mother with the smelly turkey, wasn't I? Marianne lifted her chin. Don't try to twist this. Leaving elderly people at the airport is inexcusable. Oh, I nodded. And leaving me out of the dinner table in a house I helped pay for, that's acceptable? Isabella stepped closer, her perfume sharp in my nose. You're destroying your daughter's reputation, her husband's, and that of our entire family. I tilted my head. I used to think I was part of that reputation. Turns out I was just the premium maid, the one who sends money on time and stays silent while being insulted. Douglas gritted his teeth. You will pay for today. I looked at him like I would at a faded mirror, no longer reflecting anything worth fearing. You know, I said, I used to tremble when I closed the door on family. I used to feel guilty turning down a single request. But today is different. I stepped to the door and opened it wide. You can leave now. Isabella gasped. You can't. I can, and I am. Douglas growled. You'll regret crossing the wrong people. I have friends at the Portland Press, on the city banking board. You don't want to lose your reputation. I didn't blink. I have no reputation to protect with people who have no self-respect. The room fell into silence. Then, Marianne grabbed her husband's arm and pulled him back. We shouldn't involve ourselves with people like this any further. Isabella turned last, her voice leaving behind a trace of venom. You've just shut the only door that leads back to your daughter. I simply replied, no. I just locked the door you used to walk in, take what you wanted, and leave. The door closed behind them. This time, I shut it tight. I stood still in the silence. My body no longer trembled. No apology, no tears, no clenched fists, no hesitation. It was simply over. But I also knew, deep down, they wouldn't stop. People who are used to treating you like free labor will never accept it when you stop serving. I knew that. And I began to prepare. 3 days later. Tuesday, 6:48 a.m. I was peeling an orange for breakfast when my phone buzzed. Not a call, a news alert from Portland's trending local section. Headline: Single woman abandons elderly couple at icy airport. A holiday tragedy. My hand froze mid-peel. The scent of the orange suddenly felt sour. I opened the article. Right below the title was an image of a pair of worn, water-soaked shoes meant to illustrate the cold and damp airport night. And then, line by line, the words appeared like paper cuts. Veronica Hale, 65, a resident of suburban Portland, allegedly refused to pick up her daughter's elderly in-laws, leaving them stranded for hours in the freezing airport terminal. According to family sources, Mrs. Hale has shown signs of emotional instability and has previously been distanced by her daughter due to erratic and repetitive behavior. Several anonymous neighbors describe her as isolated, often whispering to herself, reclusive. I swallowed dryly. They had struck, not with truth, but with image, not to recount, but to define me. At first, I wondered, how did they tap into the media so quickly? Then I remembered Douglas's parting threat. I've got friends at the Portland Press, on the city banking board. You don't want to lose your reputation. I let out a dry, cold laugh, like the sound of porcelain cracking in a kitchen sink. There was no mention of Isabella, no mention of Ryan, no mention of Emma, just anonymous close family sources. I sat down and stared at the screen. The last paragraph of the article was a gilded blade. Family should be built on compassion, not silence and retaliation. A generation of elders is losing the trust of the young because they never learned how to step aside with grace. My hand tightened on the armrest. No. This isn't stepping aside. This is being shoved into a ditch and having dirt thrown over your head with words. I stood up and opened my laptop. The boot up was a little slow. The machine was 5 years old, but still loyal. Like me, it bore scratches, and everyone had a reason. I opened Google. First keyword, Douglas Whitmore, Portland Press Connections. Results appeared instantly. His name was listed as an advisory board member of the Portland Times Foundation since 2017. Photo of him shaking hands with the editor-in-chief at a 2022 charity scholarship event. Noted. Next search, Ryan Whitmore's job history. LinkedIn, Project Associate Director, Maple and Birch Real Estate. Stated role, in charge of residential zoning, Northwest District, Diamond Grove Project. I pulled up the zoning map. One of the designated areas was where I currently lived. Noted. Next search, Isabella Whitmore scandal. Fewer results, but Facebook revealed a 2021 post. A user accusing Isabella of withholding pay for a housekeeper for 3 months until a legal threat was made. The post had been deleted, but I found a screenshot archived on a small legal forum. Noted. I opened my archived documents folder, where I'd kept every housing bill, bank statement, mortgage contract, credit card receipt. Then I opened a new Google Doc, titled it, Timeline What They Won't Say About Me. I began typing. 2007, Henry passed away. I sold our old home and used everything to support Emma. 2019, 48th mortgage payment made for Ryan's house. Not a single thank you. 2020, Thanksgiving, not invited. Reason, Emma was hosting Ryan's family. 2021, Isabella said, your cooking smell is unpleasant. 2022, sent a birthday card to my grandchild, no reply. 2023, Christmas Eve, rejected from my own house because I was incompatible with Emma's in-laws. I paused, took a sip of tea. A breeze drifted in through the window, very gentle. I kept typing. 2024, made the news for not picking up the woman who once called me cheap kitchen help from the airport. I scrolled down, started a list. Douglas Whitmore, media influence, public image manipulation. Isabella Whitmore, history of wage exploitation. Ryan Whitmore, benefiting from unacknowledged assets, avoiding financial responsibility. Emma Whitmore, silent complicity. I opened another blank page, titled it, Response Media Strategy. First idea, a handwritten letter, but not to Emma, to the paper, a formal statement including full transaction records, proof, and truth. Second idea, a simple video, natural light, no drama, just a calm, chronological recounting of events. No crying, no blaming. Just truth, spoken by the person who had been rewritten into a caricature. That evening, I walked to the bookstore near my house, bought a black leather notebook, thick paper, silver embossed title, Not Forgotten. Back home, I wrote on the first page, I once believed silence kept the peace. Now I know. Silence only lets others rewrite the story and erase your name from it. The final line in my journal that night, this battle is no longer about emotion, it's about dignity. And dignity. I will not let anyone use it to wipe their shoes. Wednesday morning. I woke up before dawn, sitting by the window of my small kitchen with a cup of strong black coffee. A thin fog blanketed the backyard as if Portland itself were trying to cover up what had happened days earlier. But I wasn't. I needed to remember. I powered up my laptop. The same document. Timeline, what they won't say about me. But today I created a new folder. Evidence. I began tracing the article. The final note on the Portland Times story led me to the contributing author section. And there, a standout name, Michelle Grant. I typed it into LinkedIn. Senior lifestyle editor, Portland Times. But the real detail didn't lie there. It was under volunteer and associations, 2016, present Diamond Grove Charity Board, alongside Ryan Whitmore. And in a 2022 Facebook album, a photo appeared, Michelle smiling brightly at a banquet, shoulder to shoulder with Ryan. I drew a line under Ryan's name, co-conspirator, not just in silence, but in slander. I opened my old finance folder. Every month since 2019, I have sent $2,800 to the account under Ryan Whitmore, tied to a property loan agreement. I extracted all the bank statements, highlighting each transaction. Total, $168,000 over 5 years. Next, I opened my photo archive. On Emma's social media, some photos once warmed my heart. Now I saw them differently. The Italian leather sofa. I had ordered it from Boston. The Persian rug under the coffee table, I paid nearly $4,000. The dual electric stove with the premium hood system, a Christmas gift from me the year after Henry passed. I downloaded each image, annotated each item. Alongside were the original receipts from my old shopping emails. Even in a recent clip Emma had posted, she showed off the family heirloom crystal wine glasses during Thanksgiving dinner. I zoomed in, the exact set gifted to me by a college friend. They had sat in my cabinet for over 20 years. I pressed enter and typed, "Emma, you didn't forget. You just chose to forget who gave you the things you now show off." That afternoon, I walked to the print shop near my house. I asked them to print all the documents, including the full bank transaction history, 60 pages, annotated social media images, original receipts for furniture, appliances, groceries, and credit cards for holidays, legal proof I sold my former house to fund Emma after Henry passed. I requested hardcover binding, thick paper, and smudge-resistant ink. 12 copies. The young staff member asked, "That's a lot. Family reunion?" I smiled, but didn't answer. I simply said, "I need everyone to look at the past," without being allowed to turn away. Back home, I opened Isabella's Facebook. Her profile wasn't private. Her need to flaunt always outweighed her sense to hide. One post caught my eye. Christmas Eve at Emma's lovely villa, 12 special guests, warmth, elegance, abundance. Isabella Whitmore. Below was a photo of the dinner table. 6 people on one side, 6 on the other. A glowing chandelier. Gold-plated chairs. I zoomed in, recognized every face. Emma's college friend. 2 of Ryan's co-workers. Isabella's distant aunt. A fellow mom from my granddaughter's music class. All had walked through my home at some point. I opened Word, created 12 letters. To those who sat at that table on Christmas Eve, my name is Veronica Hale, someone you may have never heard of. But if you ever sat on that cream velvet chair, poured water from that crystal pitcher in the kitchen, or admired the artwork on the living room wall, then I was the one who paid for everything you enjoyed that night. No, I'm not sending this to ask for anything back. I simply want you to know, someone in that house told the press I was unstable, alienated due to erratic behavior. So, I've attached receipts, photos, and documented proof. I'm not asking you to speak up, not asking you to defend me. I only ask that you ask yourself, who truly built the dream this family now lives in with blood, trust, and forgiveness? I sealed each envelope, wrote each name according to their seat placement in Isabella's photo, left to right. I didn't need to track down their addresses. I had saved them all, back when I was the mom who cared. The local post office would handle the rest. When I returned home, the clock struck 5 p.m. Emma's Christmas lights were still on. I looked from a distance, not with anger, just sorrow. Sorrow for what could have been a real home. I sat down and wrote the final line in my journal. I don't need revenge with tears. I just need them to see who truly fed their dreams with blood and trust. Veronica didn't cry that night. She simply turned on soft classical music, drank tea from her old crystal cup, and lay down for the first sleep that didn't feel like a debt. 6:32 p.m. I tied the black scarf around my neck, the same mourning dress I'd worn to Henry's funeral, the only man who had ever fully listened to me before the world started labeling me a burden. No makeup, no perfume, just a small notebook in my purse and an envelope containing the names of the 12 people who sat at last year's Christmas table. I closed my front door and got into the car. No GPS, no call ahead. Just a road I'd driven 100 times. The road to the house where no one ever called me by two simple words: homeowner. 6:43 p.m. I parked a short distance from Emma's house. The light spilling from the windows flooded the sidewalk like an open invitation, or like the smugness of those enjoying a feast without ever wondering who built that kitchen, that table, the meals steaming on their plates. I took a deep breath and walked in. 6:45 p.m. The door was unlocked, as if they'd always assumed I would be welcome. Inside, laughter echoed. Isabella stood by the table pouring red wine for the guests. Emma smiled softly, dressed in pale pink. Ryan was mid-story, something about a real estate project in Seattle. No one noticed me. No one imagined the woman they called the past would walk straight into their present in a funeral dress. I walked directly to the head of the table. The room fell silent. I opened my purse, pulled out each folder, clearly labeled. For Marianne Carter. For John L. Schmidt. For Dr. Phyllis Hawthorne. For Isabella Whitmore. I made my way around the table, placing each folder squarely in front of its recipient. I skipped no one. I said nothing until I returned to the head of the table. Emma stood up, voice rising. "Mom, what are you doing? What is all this?" I looked around. Each guest was flipping through the file before them. Their expressions are slowly shifting. I spoke calmly. "You're all educated people. You can read. So I won't waste many words. These are receipts for the table you're sitting at, the chairs you're leaning on, bank transfers I made to Ryan to keep this house under Emma's name. These are photos of Emma showing off furniture, each piece, every set, every crystal glass I bought using my retirement savings." Isabella shot up. "Why are you doing this? It's Christmas. Are you trying to humiliate your daughter?" I looked her in the eye. "No, I'm trying to stop being humiliated after every penny I gave helped build the dream you're now living." Ryan clenched his fists but said nothing. One of the guests, Marianne, turned to a page marked sofa set, $7,500, and looked at Emma. "You said this was a keepsake from Henry." Emma stammered. It was bought by Mom, but she said it was a gift," I interrupted, for the first time letting a slight smile rise. "Yes, I called it a gift, but people gift things once, not for 60 straight months, only to be called a burden." The room fell utterly still. A younger guest quietly recorded with her phone, unaware my voice was already being streamed live on social media. I continued, clearly. "You said I was unpleasant, that my cooking clung to the walls. You called me the nameless maid. But it was me who paid for every carpet under your feet, me who bought every bottle of wine you're sipping." Isabella stood, face flushed. "We never asked you to. That was your choice." I met her gaze. "No, I once believed I had to, because I thought if I sacrificed enough, I'd be loved again." I paused. "But tonight I see clearly, it's not that I wasn't enough. It's that you were never worthy." Marianne set her glass down. John looked toward Ryan. "You said your mother-in-law was unstable, estranged. You didn't say she funded the entire house." Ryan remained silent. I pulled out one final sheet from my coat pocket, a printed bank authorization, the cancellation of the monthly transfer, confirmed 3 days ago. I held it up. The light caught it, making it shine in the still room. "Tonight is the last Christmas I'll ever find." I tucked the paper back into my pocket, looked across the room where no one could meet my gaze anymore. "Starting tomorrow, I fund myself." I turned around. No one stopped me. No one dared. I walked through the door and closed it gently behind me. But in my heart, I knew the echo of truth doesn't need shouting. It only needs to be clear and right on time. That March was unusually cold. Spring winds still carried dampness from the ocean, sweeping through Portland's empty streets. Wrapped in an old sweater, Veronica set her teacup down on the table and quietly gazed out the living room window. She no longer checked the mailbox every morning like before, but that day, the soft clatter of a parcel falling through the mail slot made her step out. A thick envelope from the bank. The headline printed boldly in red. Asset seizure notice due to 3 months of delinquency. Recipient Emma Whitmore. The address, the very house Veronica had signed the mortgage for 5 years ago on behalf of her daughter. Veronica wasn't surprised, but she held the envelope for a long time. Her hands didn't shake, but her heart tightened just slightly. That afternoon, as the last sunlight turned the walkway gold, the doorbell rang. 3 times. Not fast, not rushed, but heavy enough. Veronica didn't get up immediately. She knew who was outside, and she needed one more moment to prepare for the conversation she could no longer avoid. The door opened. Emma stood there, pale, eyes red. The wind blew through her messy hair and both hands clenched, as if trying to hold on to some trace of warmth from her mother. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. I didn't think it would end up like this." Veronica said nothing. She simply stepped aside, letting her daughter in. Emma took off her shoes, slowly walking into the house that once was home, once the place where she and her mother had shared takeout dinners and quiet evenings. Veronica poured herself a cup of hot tea. The two of them sat across from each other at the old table, the one where years ago Emma had proudly shown off school awards with a smile full of hope. "It's been 3 months. I haven't been able to pay the mortgage," Emma began, her voice tight. "They're threatening to seize the house. Ryan moved out. His parents won't help. You're all I have left." Veronica nodded slightly, not because she agreed, but because she had known this for a long time. "Mom, I know I was wrong, but I'm still your daughter, right? I don't know why I acted that way. Maybe I wanted to prove something, to Ryan, to his family, and I forgot who was always there." Veronica looked deep into Emma's eyes. In that moment, she saw again the little brown-haired girl who once cried in her arms after losing her father. But at the same time, she saw the woman who had shut her out of dinners, out of family photos, out of the very heart she had sacrificed everything to hold up. "You didn't lose me, Emma," Veronica said gently. "You just put me aside so others could walk in." Emma broke down, tears spilling without control. She reached for her mother's hand. "Can you forgive me?" Veronica didn't pull away, but she didn't tighten her grip either. She simply sat there as calm as a lake after the storm. "I forgive you," she said, her voice slow and steady. "I forgave you a long time ago, but I haven't forgotten, and I won't go back to being a shadow. I won't be the woman in the kitchen quietly cooking just to earn a seat at the corner of the table." Emma choked up, unable to speak. She stood, bowed her head low, and slowly walked out of the house. As the door closed behind her, Veronica remained seated, eyes following her daughter's silhouette. She didn't feel lighter. She didn't feel angry. Just something clear, that in that moment she had cut the final thread of guilt. Outside the window, the last light of winter began to shift. Veronica rose and pulled the curtains wider. On the table, Emma's teacup was still warm, but she didn't touch it. Instead, she turned into the kitchen, switched on the electric stove, and pulled out a notepad. It was her list of spring goals. Learn watercolor painting. Plant tomatoes on the balcony. And travel to Charleston, the place she and her husband once dreamed of but never made it to. Veronica smiled, not for anyone to see, but for herself. December in Portland carried an unusual stillness. Snow had yet to fall, but the air was cold enough that wool scarves had become a necessity. Veronica Hale stood at the gates of Roosevelt High School, holding a small, carefully wrapped gift. She adjusted her coat, took a deep breath, and stepped into the festival hall, where music, laughter, and holiday lights blended into an unexpectedly warm atmosphere. The celebration wasn't for her, but she had been invited by young Dario, the son of her old friend Rosa, who had always called Veronica his god-grandmother since the day Rosa told him it was Veronica who had helped them find their first home in Portland after the divorce. No blood ties, no obligation. Just a hand offered when another needed one. The event began with simple performances, choral songs, short skits, and then the student reflections. When Dario's name was called, the boy stepped up to the stage, hands trembling with a paper, but his eyes searched for the third row, where Veronica sat. She smiled and nodded a quiet reassurance. He began by thanking his mother, then, unexpectedly, came a pause that silenced the room. "I want to thank someone else," he said. "She doesn't share my last name. She doesn't live with me. But every time I needed advice, or a hug, or a warm cup of cocoa, she was there. She made me believe that family isn't something you're born into. It's something you choose." He stepped off the stage, walked straight to Veronica, and hugged her tightly. For a few seconds, the auditorium held its breath. Then came a wave of applause, like a tide. Veronica wrapped her arms around him. For the first time in years, her chest felt light. After the ceremony, many parents approached her to chat and ask her questions. One young couple, the parents of one of Dario's classmates, walked up with their little girl. The girl, around 8, her hair braided into 2 plaits, handed Veronica a handmade card colored in crayon, a dinner table filled with food with a white-haired woman at the center, and the words, "We hope you'll always have dinner with our family." Veronica took the card. Her hands trembled slightly, but her heart warmed. The young woman, the girl's mother, said, "We heard this past year hasn't been easy for you, but if you ever need a place to sit for the holidays, our home always has room." Veronica only nodded, afraid that if she spoke, the tears might come. That evening, back in her small apartment, she pinned the card to the fridge. The space wasn't luxurious, but it was hers, from every chair to the artwork on the wall. She poured herself a glass of wine, lit a candle, and sat at the table, intending to write in her journal. But her eyes caught the mailbox near the door. Inside, beyond the usual bills, was a large cream envelope with a red seal from Smithfield Academy, one of the most prestigious universities in the Northeast. She opened it and read the first line as if not believing her eyes. Full scholarship in sociology. Scholarship name, the Maria Hale Memorial Fund, sponsored by Mrs. Veronica Hale. She set the letter down, leaned back in her chair, and stared at the flickering candlelight. Maria, her late husband. The man who had stood by her through years of hardship, saving every dollar, making sandwiches for their daughters' breakfasts, and dreaming, someday, of giving something back to education. After he passed, she kept a small portion of her savings, quietly. And for the past 5 years, she had saved more, from tutoring work, from handmade craft sales, to build that scholarship fund. She didn't announce it. She didn't show it off. She just hoped that one day a young person would get to study and live the dream she and her husband had once held close. And that day was today. Veronica didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just sat there, calm, as if a circle had finally closed. A week later, while cleaning her bookshelf, she found an old photo frame, a picture from Christmas 2007. Emma had just graduated. Veronica was smiling brightly, carrying the roast turkey to the table. She stared at it for a long time, then gently placed it back into a drawer. Not to forget, but to preserve, like how one stores away something that was once everything, but is no longer the present. That evening, a friend called to invite her to dinner. When she arrived, more than 10 people were waiting. None were family by blood. No one shared her last name. But every single person stood up, pulled out a chair, poured her a drink, asked her how she was. Not one spoke of favors. Not one mentioned duty. Only one quiet, profound feeling remained: belonging. Veronica smiled, gently raised her glass, and said, "Thank you for not letting me sit alone this Christmas." Perhaps what makes Veronica's story resonate with us isn't outrage, but recognition. How many of us have once believed that if we just loved enough, sacrificed enough, we would eventually be understood? But the truth is, family ties aren't always fair. Sometimes you give everything, only to be forgotten. You stand behind every meal, every holiday, every loan, only to one day be told, your presence makes others uncomfortable. But what makes Veronica a symbol isn't that she demanded every dollar back. It's that she reclaimed her dignity, not by hurting anyone, not by making noise, but by telling the truth and by holding on to her self-respect. The last Christmas she ever funded for her family, it was also the first Christmas she gave herself a gift, the right to live with value without needing someone else's approval. And maybe that's what we all need to remember. Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who won't let you sit alone on the days that matter. Have you ever found yourself in Veronica's shoes, forgotten, or quietly sacrificing for others? What would you do next? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story meant something to you, don't forget to subscribe to Stories Unfolded, where old wounds are told to be healed through truth.